Hey, what's up guys, and welcome back to another Reddit Stories video. And today we have some of the most unsettling things people still cannot explain. And I genuinely mean that. These aren't ghost stories or creepypastas. These are regular people, parents, kids, families, who experienced something that made absolutely no sense and have been sitting with it ever since. No explanations, no resolutions, just that feeling of the world being slightly wrong, in a way you can never fully describe to someone who wasn't there. So sit back, relax, and let's get into it. Please like and subscribe. The goal is 500 subscribers and we're getting there. All right, let's go. I've seen some pretty wild stuff in my life, but most of it is explainable. The one event that comes to mind was witnessed by my dad, brother, and myself, and it's a two-part encounter, but I still consider it one event. It was around 1998. My family and I had just moved into an old clapboard house on the edge of town. It had a huge backyard with a 6-foot wooden privacy fence on one side and a metal chain link fence about 4.5 feet high around the other 3 sides of the yard. Neighbors on one side, the privacy fence side, a small grass alley that ran behind the back with a street light, and then another yard, etc. Our bedroom was an old converted sunroom on the back of the house that faces the backyard. It had floor-to-ceiling windows all along the back wall looking into the backyard. We didn't have many options as to where to place our beds, so my headboard was against the windows, and my brother's bed was about 8 feet away with his headboard against the opposite wall, with the foot of the bed facing the windows. One night, we were up pretty late. I was in my bed, and he was in his, just talking about random things, when suddenly he got quiet. I figured he fell asleep, but then I heard him whispering in a shaky breath. So I'm like, what? And I hear him whisper again. So again, I'm like, speak up, I can't hear you. And he goes, don't move and be quiet, in a forced whisper. But I, thinking he's messing with me, I'm like, bitch, why? And I'm looking at him, and mind you, my head is to the windows, and he's pointing into the backyard behind my bed. So I quickly sit up and turn around and see this huge dog head staring almost nose to glass through the window right behind my bed. I'm almost nose to nose with this thing. Just a single pane of glass and about 10 inches of empty air separate me from this thing. Now, when I say I screamed, I mean I screamed. Not my proudest moment, but hey, I was like 10 years old. Well, anyways, the thing quickly ducked under the window and then ran to the side of the yard and jumped the 4.5-foot chain link fence and bolted off into the darkness. My dad came running into the room with our mom right on his heels. We were able to get out that something was looking through our window, so Dad ran back to his room and grabbed his shotgun and then headed out the side door of the house and into the backyard. Unfortunately, or fortunately, I don't know, he didn't find anything. I wrote it off as I had a nightmare, and my brother wouldn't admit to seeing anything, so I took the blame and was told to quit messing around, go back to bed. Typical parent response, etc. Well, later that night, maybe an hour or so after I begged my parents to let me sleep in the living room because leaving the house wasn't an option, and still being refused, I was made to sleep in my room. So again, my brother and I are in our room with these floor-to-ceiling windows. We are just completely rattled. We are both huddled in his bed staring out the windows when we see this thing come walking along the chain link fence on all fours. And the fence only comes up to its mid-shoulders, so this thing is huge. It sniffs the ground, does a few circles, and then hops the fence into the backyard like it's nothing. It walks over to the window and again gets nose to the glass like it's trying to see in. We are panicking the whole time. Well, my brother is like, fuck this, and soon as he steps off the bed, we hear this loud bang and there's a flash of light. The thing at the windows gets knocked sideways, and without even missing a beat, it turns and runs across the full length of backyard, jumps the back chain link fence. It cleared the fence, the alleyway, and then landed in the back neighbor's yard. This is easily a 15-20 foot jump minimum, clearing their fence like it was nothing, and was gone at a dead run, up beside that house and off into the darkness on the other side. My dad comes tearing around the side of the house with his shotgun in hand and makes a mad dash for the side door and slams it shut behind him. He is screaming and hollering, "We gotta go." We pack up and head to a hotel that night. My mom absolutely refused to believe we saw what we said we saw, and we only lived there for about 6 months. It rattled my dad so much, he didn't even want to come back. He told my mom that we were just going to move that next day, but she wouldn't allow it. After about 6 months, she conceded and we moved. Mind you, this is in the coastal plains region of Texas. We have no large wild canines here. We have stray dogs and coyotes, but nothing that would even remotely touch on how big this thing was. My dad swears he shot that thing with a slug from about 15 feet away with his 12-gauge shotgun, right underneath its left arm, hitting it in the ribs where its vital organs are. And nothing. It just ran off. He said the thing that freaked him out the most was that when he saw the thing jump the fence, it walked towards our window, crouched, but still on its hind legs. It wasn't walking on all fours. And then when it got to our window, it stood up straighter, and he could tell that while it looked like a dog, its body was shaped wrong. He said it looked like a really stocky person wearing a dog suit, but he could tell it wasn't a suit. Also, that when it was walking in circles sniffing the ground before coming into our yard the second time, it wasn't actually sniffing the ground like for a scent. It was staring at our window with its face to the ground like it was acting like it was sniffing the ground, almost as if it was playing a part to see if anyone would notice it. He said he's had dogs his whole life, and everything about what it was doing was wrong. A while later, I asked my dad why he was in the backyard if he thought I was having a nightmare, and he told me my brother is the one that gave it away. He said with how panicked I looked, that my brother was almost white as a sheet and wouldn't take his eyes off the window. He said, "Your brother has never looked so scared and never been one with just making stuff up." So after going back to his room with my mom as he was laying there thinking about it, he decided that if my brother was as white as he was, then we had to have seen something. So he grabbed his gun in case he had to scare some creeper out of our yard and figured he was going to go through the garage and out by the far side of the house and sneak to the corner to see if someone was peeking in our windows or if someone was actually messing with us. He never actually thought we saw a huge dog-looking thing, just that maybe with it being dark outside and us being kids with overactive imaginations, maybe we just mistook someone as something. But when he saw that thing come up the side fence and with the street light in the back alley lighting up the backyard, he saw it and it freaked him out. He was gonna creep back inside until it went up to our window, and he said as it stood up, he just got this instant feeling of just dread, like something was gonna happen to us. Last January, I was eating at a barbecue place for lunch in the middle of the week. I'm in the middle of my lunch when I realize someone is staring at me. I turn, and this guy seemed to just materialize on the other side of the room. He had this weird, creepy smile, big Freaky Fred vibes, that told me he was waiting to say something odd. He asked if I lived in the area. I lied and told him no, hoping it would end the conversation. He paused for a few moments, still keeping that smile. He replied saying he thought it was funny because the last time I had been eating the same meal, but that he liked my outfit more last time. I went there maybe twice a month and always ordered the same thing. I was freaked out but thought it was best to stay calm, so I just responded with sure and kept eating. After about a minute of more staring, he left. While it was fortunately light out, I was nervous enough that he'd pop back out on my way home that I stayed on the phone with my dad the whole time. I tried to stay extra aware of who was around me, worrying that he might try to bother me in my neighborhood. A couple of weeks went by and I figured it was just a random incident. I was wrong. After leaving a bar a few blocks from my apartment one night, I realized someone was following me. I was confused because I was the only person who exited the bar when I did, and no one had appeared nearby when I'd glanced around before the person appeared. I couldn't get a clear look at the guy, but I did notice his pupils were extremely dilated. I stayed on alert. We get to a large street that I cross. He pauses to tie his shoe for a suspiciously long time, but doesn't cross. As he starts to go in the opposite direction, I shrug and go on my way. I'm almost home. All that's left is a bridge that leads directly to the parking lot of my condo. I paused for a moment to admire the view of the river under the bridge. Then I heard something. Turning, I see him coming down the other end of the bridge. I'm shocked. As he gets closer, I realize that this guy who's been following me and the barbecue creep are the same. I start shaking and involuntarily start making some noise I can only describe as off-brand grudge croaking. I guess that's my body's fight response. He keeps coming closer, and so I start walking backwards. I kept walking to the end of the bridge, my building's parking lot, while facing him. The bridge was empty, so there wasn't anyone I could scream to. All the while, he just held a smile. We get to the end of the bridge after what feels like an eternity. At this point, I realize I have to turn my back to him to get into the parking lot. I keep thinking, this is it. I'm a goner. I turn and can feel him get closer to me. I glance and he's basically shoulder to shoulder, the biggest smile he has yet. He says it was nice to see me as always. I'm too freaked out to even respond. With that, he just crossed the street and walked away. I waited until he out of my sight to move, bolting across my building's parking lot, not stopping until I got inside and deadbolted my door. I ended up filing a police report and had been told that a similar incident had occurred earlier within the last 6 months. I was terrified that I was potentially being stalked. As we all know, COVID lockdowns began in the US last March. I left the area at the start of the lockdown and contribute that to the end of my interactions with this weirdo. I came home from college one time and got home around 1 a.m. We live in the Ozarks in a very rural area. The door was locked, so I'm banging on the door trying to get in and calling my mom's phone. It's super windy outside and pitch black, no moon. Suddenly, I hear very clearly my mom's voice out in the yard towards my grandma's house next door. I figure she's over there watching TV with grandma, so I start walking over there. It's probably a 50 yards over to her house. As I'm getting closer, I see that all the lights are off and I can't see my mom on the porch. All of a sudden, it's really quiet and I feel like I need to run. So I turn around and sprint back home and find a side door open. I go upstairs and mom is asleep in her room. I very clearly heard my mom's voice calling my name though, and in a very specific tone of her trying to get my attention. I wake her up and I'm like, "Did you call for me from the window or something?" And she had no idea what I was talking about. I was so freaked out I called my grandma because she kind of sounds similar to my mom, but she had been asleep too. Still don't know what that was, and everyone thinks I'm crazy or was sleep deprived. That was many years ago, and I live in my grandma's house now, and I've never had an experience like that since, but I felt weird about being out in the yard at night since then. Alright, this story haunts me. Basically, I was 17 and working at a high-end retail shop in a big shopping center, literally the last place you'd expect a ghost story. The shifts used to run quite late over the Christmas period, as we'd be open as late as 9 p.m., so it was dark and quiet for a long time. One particular winter night, I was on a late shift with 2 other coworkers. My 2 coworkers were on the shop floor, and I was out back, taking stock and putting away stocks. If anybody has worked in clothes shops with large stocks, hopefully you'll know what I mean when I say the clothes are stored in rolling racks, like shelves on wheels, and each rack is controlled by a wheel on the side which you spin to move it along the rail. You can also lock the shelves so they don't move. I know that people say this all the time, that they know they did something, but I truly do know that I locked the shelves. And I know this because I was climbing the shelves using each row as a ladder to reach the top sections. Had they not been locked, I couldn't have done this, as the shelves would have rolled. So I climb down to grab some more stock, and as I turn around, the lights turn off. Now, the lights are movement triggered, and I was moving in the space, but even so, sometimes they turn off. For some reason though, this plunge into pitch black raised all the hairs on my neck and I froze in my place. There are no windows out back, so no light at all. When the lights flickered back on, all 3 shelves, all of which I had locked in place, were rolling towards me on their track, completely unpushed. I have to emphasize that firstly, they were locked, and secondly, if you know what I'm on about, these shelves are heavy. They require pushing and won't move on their own. It's probably quite unprofessional of me, but I couldn't stand another minute and I dashed out into the shop floor, completely unable to speak. Luckily, we're a small team and I'm quite close with all my coworkers, and my boss could see me visibly shaking. Once she'd calmed me down enough for me to tell her what happened, she said, "Come on, let's just go check the security cameras and see what happened." Here's where it gets really creepy. We went into her office, brought up the security footage, and all that had been captured was the moment the lights went dark, and then it skips straight to a minute later and you see the door shut after me as I dashed onto the shop floor. The 30 seconds to a minute where the shelves rolled towards me was completely unrecorded. Creeps me out just rewriting it. I'll try to make this short. Lived in a town with husband and kids. This town had a big mall we went to frequently. Carousel, big play area. Moved overseas for a decade, moved back home. Took my daughter, 13, to the mall to reminisce, see if she remembered it. Sadly, the mall and shops around it were closed, except one, a Nordstrom rack, which we went in, but it was off, for lack of a better word. Clothes on the floor, a couple women looking around, big signs on stores, gone. Completely defunct. Went home. Told my husband, who couldn't believe it, so he suggested we drive over there for him to see. So we did. I can't fully describe the feeling I had. Maybe dizzy, maybe like falling in a dream. But there it was, a mostly thriving mall. People, cars, signs, a lit up marquee on the theater, all stores around open. I can't explain what my daughter and I saw. I'll never be able to. Something really similar happened to me as a kid. I was playing in the backyard and I sort of poked my head back inside and saw my brother, who was really young at the time, talking to my mom about how he wanted to eat something. I don't remember what exactly he requested anymore. I'm an adult now and this happened when I was around 6 or 7, so the memory is hazy. But my mom agreed to fix it up for him. I just shrugged it off and went back to playing outside. Eventually, I had enough of outside, so I went inside the house and asked my mom if my brother ever got the snack, and I was interested in it too. She was confused, and I explained, and she basically said that never happened. She isn't the type to lie, especially not like that. She told me he had been sleeping the whole time. In disbelief, I went to the room and saw him sleeping on the bed and in a totally different shirt than he had been wearing before. I mentioned to my mom how earlier I saw him with a different shirt and asked if she changed it, and she said no, he's been in that shirt the whole time and he has been sleeping. I had described the shirt I saw and she was confident he didn't change shirts. She seemed genuinely confused. I did my best to explain what I saw, but her story never changed. I was never able to explain it. My mom has always been sharp as a tack, and at the time she was very young, no cognitive issues or anything. Not sure what happened there. She said maybe I fell asleep outside, but I was confident that didn't happen. We notice when we wake up after all, and that didn't occur. I wonder if she was just incredibly tired that day and didn't remember somehow. Not sure about the shirt detail. He was about 2 or 3 years old. Maybe he changed his own shirt. There's no way I was outside for long enough for her to forget feeding her own kid, and it wasn't like she was avoiding feeding me. Our household wasn't like that. It could have been due to some probable thing somehow, but I remember that, and for many years after, it left me feeling like I saw into a different dimension, and it confused me a lot. I always felt like I saw into another dimension with no way to prove it, but I guess I'll never know. Nothing like that has happened to me since, so I realize it may have a more rational explanation, but who knows? Your story made me recall that long-standing mystery. It was bizarre enough that I never forgot it. I lived in a bizarre little house as a child. It was incredibly tall and thin, like an attached house except freestanding, with 3 floors, a basement, and an attic. It was full of quirks, such as 2 fully functional fireplaces, a shower stall in the center of the basement, a backyard so small that you could not take 5 paces without hitting the fence, and an old-timey rope-pulled dumbwaiter that led from the kitchen to my bedroom. I loved that weird little place, but unfortunately, it was incredibly old, and half of its charm was the fact that it seemed to have been designed by an inarticulate conclave of lunatics, and eventually the repair costs exceeded what my parents were willing to sink into it, and we had to move. Preparing for the move was a chore. I packed most of my stuff myself, and I had taken to throwing stuff down the dumbwaiter and shoving all my clothes so thickly in my closet that they became a single solid brick of fabric. While clearing that closet out, in fact, I came across a feature I hadn't noticed before, an attic entrance in the roof. Being an adventurous kid, I opened her up, stood on the clothes brick, and began my first and last exploration into the topmost part of our weird little house. The first thing I noticed was that it wasn't as dark as it should have been. The place was strung with old red Christmas lights, which still burned with leftover incandescents, and a dozen little cracks and holes peeped down into all the bedrooms below. The second thing I noticed was that the place was set up for habitation. The insulation was plasticed away. There was an old gurney piled with sleeping bags and sheets, and the rusted mint green refrigerator, which still worked when I tested it. The third thing were the bones. There were a lot of bones. I was a kid at the time with a limited understanding of anatomy, but there were bones of all types heaped into a series of piles around the center of the attic, small and large, clean and white, from every and any imaginable sort of creature, haphazardly stacked in a half-dozen osseous clumps. 2 of them were blackened, as if someone had tried to burn them, and the walls nearest those blackened piles were scrawled in dark bone-charred messages. Mostly they were just smears, but the word sorry appeared more than once. That room had been sitting over my head for 8 years while I slept.